Well, Gunner Alan Lindblum, brother, you used to go by Al, and now you go by Gunner. You said that Al was the old you, the version that you left back in prison. My question for you is, who was Gunner and who was Al?
It's a good question. Al was a lost soul in every sense of the word, trying too hard to be accepted, to impress people who are not good people. Had no problem with violence or committing crime. We can get into what led to that, but and the new guy is someone who wouldn't do any of that. Gunner, so Gunner's my middle name, and it fit me better for me in the street before prison, but everybody knew me as Al. My name's Alan Gunner Lindblum, but everybody just called me Al. But when I decided I don't want nothing to do with that Al no more, let's just use my middle name Gunner, which is a good pen name because I'm a novelist, and people remember the name Gunner. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I go by Gunner today, and that was my wife's idea. She's like, you know what? I don't even like when people refer to you as Al, people from the old neighborhood and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I remember Al, and everything you remember is bad.
Well, Gunner, you were raised by a mentally ill mother and an abusive alcoholic father. Your parents were divorced when you were 4, and you moved in with your grandparents, the Tacos.
Toco,
who were
Tocco.
Gotcha, sorry about that. Who were closely tied to the Detroit mob. Most kids don't choose the environment that they grow up in. How much of the path you took do you think was shaped by what you saw and what you were surrounded by versus what you actually chose?
I think it's is incredibly impactful, when you're a kid, and it shaped me in ways that you can't imagine. But basically, I was aware that my family was different because of how people treated us. I paid attention. I was a pretty observant little kid. Everybody gives your grandpa and your uncles all kinds of respect. The two-handed handshake. Hey, Pete, Gumbadi, how you doing, Paisan? Everybody kiss them on the cheek, or they kiss on the lips. It was, you notice these things, And then, of course, you get older, you start becoming aware of, I got an uncle who was 12 years older than me. He was more like an older brother. He kind of schooled me to who's who in the family. This guy's the maid guy. That guy's capo. This guy's underboss. This guy's this. And I'm like, well, those are the guys who get all the respect and the love from everybody in the community. You know what I'm saying? And the Sicilian community is a very tight-knit community. It's something that a lot of people will never understand. I guess if you ever watched The Godfather, that's kind of how I came to understand my family, was from watching The Godfather. When I was about 12 years old, I was at my Uncle Joe Toco's house with my aunt, my Aunt Fran, and my cousin Jerry, cousin Patrice, with my sister and my mom. And they were like, oh, we're going to watch this movie, The Godfather. I didn't even know what it was. I was only about 12, and I sat down and watched it, and all of a sudden, all these answers to all these questions began to pop in my mind. I'm like, now our family wasn't exactly like the Hollywood glamorized version of The Godfather, but in many ways it was very similar. You know what I'm saying? And then it all began to make sense. So I'm like, okay, criminals are my family. They're accepted and seem to be encouraged. Everybody shows them a lot of respect and love, and everybody kisses their ass. So. And then around that same age, 14, 15, I must have been asking questions to my uncles, my Uncle Sal and Uncle Pete. And they were like, well, you don't have to worry about it. You're never going to be in the mafia, made member of the mafia, because you're only half Sicilian on your mother's side. If you were the Sicilian on your father's side, then you could, be one of them. But they're never going to accept you. Now, and he says, but you don't want to be in the mafia. Why would you ever want to? Because then you got to answer to some old man, who's, Uncle Joe, Uncle Tony, Uncle whoever, and then you got to give him a piece of your money every week. So you make $500, you got to give him $100. You make $5,000, you got to give him $1,000 or $2,000. And he's like, that's for the rest of your life. Plus, you're going to be on an FBI watch list, and there's cops are going to harass you, and always going to pull you over and pull you out of the car and search you, and what are you up to? And he's like, you don't want nothing to do with any of that. And I'm like, no. but I did have some underlining like resentment towards them, for them for thinking, they wouldn't accept me. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm in the Sicilian, the word is defetto, means defective. So if you're half Sicilian, you're what's called defetto, means defective. So they think I'm defective. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that bothered me. So now I acted even wilder to prove to them that, I'm saying, hey, I'm worthy of you people. So if they asked me to do something, I would do it, or just I was always fighting and knocking fools out and in the clubs fighting. I was a bouncer. I bounced at this really high-end nightclub that was loaded with mafiosos, and I wasn't really fighting much in there because it was a high-end place. But the younger generations that would come in there would also see me at these other nightclubs just knocking guys out, fighting and tearing up the place. I'd come in with these gangsters, you know what I'm saying? They all knew I was a drug dealer and carried a gun and, you know what I mean, drove fancy cars and big gold chains. And they all these young mafia wannabe guys my age or maybe in their 30s, they were all kissing my ass. And of course, a lot of the other older guys who were in there too, because there was like different sets. Like you had like the 50, 60-year-old guys, the 30, 40-year-old guys, the 20, 30. So they're all in the club, but they all had their different sections of the club. And so it was an older place, so the average age in there was probably like 30. And I was only like 20 when I was bouncing. But all these young mob prodigy kids who were cousins of mine and stuff, but they would all say, you know who that is? That's he's a Toko, and they how, and you're like, his mother's Grace Toko, and his grandpa be Toko, and then they'd all come over and kind of want to kiss my ass and be like, because the boss was Toko, and and I am blood related to him, but he's not like it's not a first cousin or a first uncle or nothing like that, but he's my grandpa's second cousin. But like I said, in the Sicilian community, it's very tight. It's a very tight knit community. And they had the same last name. Their parents grew up in the same neighborhood as cousins, in the same back in Sicily. Migrated to Detroit, moved to the same neighborhood for a reason, to be around family and obviously the community. And so there's a big community of, I'd say, several hundred Sicilians from Tirracini, Sicily, who migrated to America and all ended up in Detroit because they knew each other and they were all family. They built their own church. Anyway, so it left an impression on me. So, no, I didn't want to be in the mob because I didn't want to have to kiss their ass and, whatever. Plus, I was a little resentful. But I said, hey, crime is okay. So I started selling. The main reason I started selling drugs is I was starving. My parents got divorced. My mother was in a mental institution. Parents got divorced, and I lived with my mom on and off till I was like 12. Then I got expelled from 8th grade, the whole school district. So I had to go live with my dad, who was an alcoholic, and he didn't feed me. And I was about 15 at the time, 14, 15. So I just started dabbling and smoking weed and stuff. And I started selling a little bit of weed, so I had money for weed, and munchies. And let me spray myself with some DEET, by the way, because the mosquitoes are starting to attack me. So you can't, once that DEET wears off, you're out of luck. Like you have to have it. They'll get anywhere that you don't spray. They'll get ankles, feet, whatever. Anyway, so there was I had one guy I knew who was a drug dealer. To me, he was a big time drug dealer, but just a small time weed dealer. He was a friend's cousin, and I basically begged him to front me some weed so I could sell it and make some money, because I had these black dudes in the ghetto. Not too far from my house is a weird little neighborhood. It was these projects, and it was almost all black, called the Oxford Square, the Cordova Apartments. And it was what we called the panic zone, because they sold crack in there. And this is the late 80s. So, I mean, the late 80s crack epidemic. I mean, and these crack dealers would sit in the corner and they'd sell rocks all day, and they'd make $600 or $800 a day. It's a lot of money back then. Well, I had a friend who lived in there. His name is Sidney. His brother and cousins were these crack dealers, and they'd see me and want to buy my weed because they said they could only get. He's like, all we get is dirt weed, brown weed. All you white boys get all the good weed. And so I'd sell them a couple joints, and they'd beg me to sell them a whole bag, and I'd be like, I'm not selling you my whole bag. But when I got them in my head, I'm gonna make some money so I can have some food, so I can eat. I thought if I could just get over there with a sack of weed, which is insane to think that some 15-year-old white kid's going to drive his moped in the middle of the ghetto in a crack panic zone and set up shop and started selling weed. So I brought somebody with me who had a gun on him, who kind of like kept his gun out and let him know I wasn't some punk. And anyways, I went over and I sold, a bunch of weed to these black dudes and made some money, and I was off and running. And the problem was, I got expelled. I had already been expelled from school by that point for fighting and for being involved in part of a stolen property ring, which, they expelled me because I wouldn't cooperate. I wouldn't rat on my friend who sold me a stolen jacket. And he lied to me and said the jacket wasn't stolen, but I bought it. And then when I got busted with it, because the kid he stole it from saw me wearing it at school and told the cops. And so I said, I bought it from some black dude on the corner. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, yeah, sure, pal. Tell us or we're going to charge you with receiving and stealing stolen property and interfering with a police investigation or something like that. And I took it. And then by the time I was 19, I had 7 felonies. I'd already been busted with pipe bombs, fighting, felonious assault, malicious destruction of property.
Let me pause here for a moment, because this next thing genuinely fits everything that we talk about on the Act Social podcast. A big focus for our Christian walk is being mindful of what we are consuming, being mindful of what we let into our hearts, our minds, and our souls. And one of the simplest ways to do that is to fill your mind with what's true. That's why I love what Hillsdale College is doing. Hillsdale offers more than 40 free online courses on the Bible, the Constitution, history, economics, and so much more, all taught by real professors, completely free at your own pace. They've been doing this since 1844, and more than 3 million people have already signed up, no tuition and no catch. Whether you want to understand scripture more deeply or really come to know the country that you live in, this is time well spent, and it costs you nothing but the decision to start. Go to hillsdale.edu and start a free course today. Now, let's get right back into it. So how much of that bad path that you were walking down do you think was caused from the normalization of the sin and the crime and the things going on around you? Because something that I've kind of noticed, even just with my own personal life, is I find myself falling down the wrong paths when it's normalized, when it feels like that's the right thing to do, when it feels like, hey, these other people are doing it, I might as well do it too.
Yes, the fact that crime in that world was normalized played a huge part, was a huge factor in my life. But I knew I was doing wrong. Like, I knew I was sinning, I knew selling drugs was not good. It was frowned upon. And, wasn't proud of it. There was a part of me who was proud of it. It was like, look, I'm a drug dealer. I got a big gold chain and a leather jacket and a car with big kickers in it. And I'm driving around in flashy clothes. But there was a part of me like, with my friends and my girlfriends and my friends' parents and stuff, like, I didn't want them to know I was a drug dealer. I told them I worked or invested or whatever. Of course, they all knew. Nobody's stupid. No 17-year-old kid pulls up in a freaking tricked out car with limousine tint, big rims and tires and kickers with a gold chain and a $600 leather jacket. You know what I'm saying?
He did something to get it.
With a beeper. You know what I'm saying? Where, like, back then, the only people who had a beeper were like doctors and
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. It was obvious.
So I got my beeper. And I'd show it off. I'd wear it out. I'd wear flashy clothes and jewelry. I was a punk. I was a stupid kid. Trying to freaking $500 Fila tracksuits and stuff. Just so it was goofy. But it was not, like you said, it was normalized. So it was like, to me, it was not a big deal. I'm like, this is what people do in our family. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how I thought about it. And I never really consciously thought about it. Like, it's what people do in my family. I'll do it. I'm just like, but I saw it. I was around it and I was exposed to it. And I didn't really know what crimes those guys did. These mafiosos did. But I saw The Godfather and it looked like they were involved in a lot of stuff. And that was illegal. And so what the hell? I'm just selling weed and steroids. So, no big deal. But, it was, I had a really, interesting, like the first time God, spoke to me, and I'll say that spoke to me. I was in the county jail for selling steroids. I got busted selling steroids, right? And got set up. And I was at the table running a dice game or a poker game or something, and I was getting irritated. Somebody was saying something that slicked to me. Like, I was a tough kid, and I liked to fight, and I was, like, always brawling, and I didn't like anyone disrespecting me, nothing like that. I gave everybody respect and treated everyone as equals, but if you disrespect me, you know what I'm saying, we're going to have a problem. And some black dude was disrespecting me, and I was like, you know, I felt disrespected. I was debating whether I'm going to beat his ass or knock him out or whatever. So I sit down, and I'm going to take a break from the table for a minute. I'll let my friend Lucky or whatever run the dice. As I'm sitting there, I look down, and there's a devotional on the ground, and it's open, and it's under the table. And I don't know, I looked down and saw it, and it's the Daily Bread. I'd never heard of the Daily Bread, so I picked it up and I read it. And Ryan, this is where the story takes a turn. I read it, and it's the words on the page spoke to my soul. Like, it felt like it was speaking to me at the moment. And I imagine it was something about, like, you know, when you get irritated, Satan is trying to nudge you and, like, into doing something sinful or violent or whatever. But you have to take time to, you know, to put it into God's hands and God, whatever it was. And it was like, it calmed me. So I took that book and I put it in my cell. I was very blessed to have a one-man cell, a single-man cell. There were 4 in every unit of like 38 cells, so 4 of them were 2-man or 1-man cells, and I was lucky, and I got one. It was in the corner. So every night before I go to bed, I'd read this Daily Bread, the verse of the day, and the devotional, right? And it spoke to my soul, bro. Like, I was like, after about a week, it didn't take long, I was like, God's real. There's no doubt about it. Like, he's talking to me through this book. Why he wants anything to do with me, I don't know. That makes no sense. I'm a scumbag in jail. But he's definitely, this is real. Like, you couldn't convince me. At that point, I knew God was real. And you couldn't tell me otherwise. I would have put my head on the line. So then about a week into that, I'm reading this Daily Bread every day, and it's just speaking to my soul, man. It's like it's speaking exactly to me what I was thinking at that moment of that day. Then a dove lands in my window, right? And I didn't know a dove was the representation of the Holy Spirit descending or God or Jesus. None, I didn't know any of that. But a dove landed. So I'm 11 stories up. It's called the Tower. Macomb County Jail is called the Tower. It's 11 stories up. I'm in the 11th floor, max security, the top floor. And the window is just a little like 4-inch slit that runs the length of the room, right? And so you're up real high and you can see the whole city, you know, 11 stories up, you can see everything. And all of a sudden this dove starts landing in my window and he's looking at me. It's this dove and he's just looking at me. And he don't leave though. He sticks around for like a week. And I'm telling the dudes in the unit, like, come look at this bird, man. This bird just keeps checking me out, landing, checking me out. He's not looking at the world. He's looking at me. No idea. This is where it gets really crazy. So I read this every day for like maybe 5 weeks. Now, you know, the Daily Breads come in 3-month chunks. So it's like, you know, 3 different months. And then you get a new one. Well, I had my girlfriend pay a lawyer to get me in front of the judge to try and get a time cut. I was trying to get 34 days shaved off my sentence, which is nothing. And you almost never get these time cuts. They're like, especially 34 days. Like, it's one thing if you serve 20 years on a 24-year sentence and you're like, hey man, I've been good behavior, can I get out at 20? But it's kind of stupid. But I figured it was worth a shot. So the next day I'm getting ready, I'm going to be going to court, you know. My sister's coming from Michigan State where she's going to college. She wrote a letter to the judge. My grandparents are going to be in court. And so I said, you know what? I might not be here tomorrow in my cell to read tomorrow's Daily Bread. Now, I'd never looked forward to the next day and cheated. I always said, you know what? I'll read tonight. I set it down. Tomorrow night before I go to bed, I pick it up and I read it. Same every night. But this night, I was like, you know what? I need to go. something's telling me to look forward to see what it says tomorrow. Like, is it going to be encouraging? Am I going to, because this thing's been speaking to my soul. This thing's been I've been having full-on conversation with God through this thing. So tomorrow, tell me what's in store. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to flip the page, because there's still like a month left in the book. There's probably 15 pages left. You know what I'm saying? I flip the page and it's blank. All the pages are blank. The whole rest of the book are blank. And it was like, okay, that was God's way of telling me, you're going home tomorrow. So I was like, I'm going home tomorrow. So I get up, they take me to court in the morning. I go to get in front of the judge, and the judge says, I got this monologue rehearsed, like I'm going to, defend myself, and I'm a changed man, and da. And I go there, and he says, Mr. Lindbloom, do you have anything to say before I make a decision? And that doesn't answer. And I said, yes, Your Honor. And before I could get out like two more words, he just hits the gavel on the stand and says, time cut granted, you're out of here. And I'm just like, wow. So that after that day, I'm telling you, man, I was with God all along. I didn't know Jesus. I knew who he was, but I didn't know him intimately. And I wasn't a committed Christian by any means. But I did believe in God, and that gave me a certain moral grounding to where I wouldn't do like aimless violence. I wouldn't target innocent people. I wouldn't, try to hurt anybody who didn't have it coming. Obviously I hurt a few people in fist fights who maybe or maybe not didn't deserve it. You know what I'm saying? Just because you're acting tough doesn't mean you deserve to get your ass beat. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't like bullies. I hated bullies. So when I'd see these big steroided out guys, I was a bigger guy. I kind of dieted down because I got cancer and a heart condition. But I was been a bigger guy. And, but anyways, I'd see these guys who I knew were soft. I knew they were like, not tough guys, but then they'd do a bunch of steroids over like a year, and they'd get all big, and then they'd walk around acting tough. And, I'd start fights with them. I'd walk in and bump into them, and most of them would be like, hey, sorry, big man, or what's sorry, Al, my bad. And I'd be, at that point, I'd be like, hey, my bad. You know what I'm saying? Let me buy you a drink. No, boom, I'm sorry. Because they acquiesced and kind of humbled themselves. But the ones who would get loud were like, well, what's up then? And then I'd break the jaw and let them have it. And, but other than that, I was like, I tried to be a good person generally, you know what I'm saying? Because I knew God was real and he had communicated with me. And so one of the things is every time I always had a motorcycle, a crotch rocket. And every time I go to drive that motorcycle, I get on and I do a Hail Mary, because that's what Catholics do. And I was a Catholic. I drive this motorcycle like a maniac, but before I drive it, every time I do a Hail Mary, and I would say, Father, protect me on this thing. That's all I would say, because that's all I knew to say. And then I would say, Father, protect me on this thing. And I drove that motorcycle like a lunatic for 9 years, different motorcycles every summer. And that was my thing. Everybody knew me. I had a crotch rocket, and I'd zip around selling drugs and whatever, and I'd act like a maniac. And then, but that came to an end too, because one day I had a backpack full of weed, and I was supposed to go meet somebody at like 7 Mile and I-94, and I was supposed to be there at a certain time. And I was downtown on Belle Isle, down in the ghetto, where lone white kid on a motorcycle shouldn't be, driving around hitting on black girls and with thousands of black dudes around. Belle Isle's like a big park, in Detroit, and I'm over there hitting on every black girl I see. You know what I'm saying? And dangerous. Anyways, then I realized, man, I'm going to be late. I got to meet this guy in 10 minutes. So I jump on my crotch rocket, and I'm like, I can get from downtown to 7 Mile in 10 minutes. It's 20 miles, but I'm on a crotch rocket. So I get to ripping, and I look behind me, and here comes a cop on a motorcycle chasing me. They have motorcycle cops in Detroit, like the Chips got caught, like of their Harleys. He's chasing me, but I know I can dust him on the Ninja. So I just dump it, and I go flying, and I'm ripping. I'm doing 170 miles an hour. I'm just insane. I shake at the tail. I don't even know. I never look back. I just go. Never even look back to see if he was chasing. But I was doing like 170 on the service drive, blasting through red lights, just suicidal stuff. So when I got home, I put the bike in the backyard and I left it, and I didn't touch it for like a week. I was like scared of it. My girlfriend says, "Why aren't you riding your bike, man? Like it's cat's been climbing all over it. It was black, like a mirrored black and chrome, and like the cat prints on it. It's been rained out on. I'm like, oh yeah. So I go to try and drive it, but I knew what was going to happen. I go to try and drive it. I get like a block or two, and I'm just terrified of it. Basically, I felt the hand of God removed from me. For years, he had protected me on that bike. I asked him, I said, Father God, protect me on this bike, keep me safe, and he did. No close calls. I didn't get killed, and didn't go down. But then he's like, now you're testing me. You know what I'm saying? Running from the cops with a bunch of weed, doing 170 miles an hour in broad daylight down the surface. I'm like, no, now you're testing me. I'm going to remove my hand of protection from you. Now you're on your own. And I never drove a crotch rocket again. I drove that thing back and parked it. Froze up. You there?
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Yes. Yep. So I drove that bike back and parked it and called my cousin and said, hey, you want to take my bike for the summer? Because he loved the bike. And he's like, oh, what's the catch? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, no, just take it. And if you break it, you fix it or you buy it. Of course, he crashed it the second day and that was that, and never fixed it. So whatever. But anyways, so that was another God experience. And then also over that same period of 10 years from the daily bread in jail to when I got arrested and went to prison, I would pray every day that God protect me. And so I developed this like elaborate prayer that I said almost verbatim every day. And it was like, whenever I'd leave in the morning, my girlfriend never knew where I was going. I didn't have a job, nothing like that. I'd just get dressed up real nice, and then say, all right, I'm out of here. And I'd leave. But before I do anything, I'd turn the kicker down and I would pray for like 20 minutes on my way to wherever I was going. And I would pray for the health of the world. I would pray for, God's will be done, that Jesus, brings peace, that we all get along, all the wars and the racism and the hatred and all that. And I would pray for the world. Then I would pray for me last, like protect me from being arrested today. And he always did. This is where it's crazy. But like 5 different times I got arrested over like the last 2 years. All 5 days I forgot to pray. So every time I get pulled over and the lights would go on, I'd be like, I forgot to pray this morning. Every time. And they were usually just like driving on suspended or unpaid tickets or stuff like that. But like, it was just unbelievable. The second those lights flickered, I'd be like, I didn't pray this morning. Every other morning I prayed. There was a time where a cop got behind me and I had expired plates. And a cop gets right behind me on the expressway. And I'm dirty. I got a gun. I got drugs. I'm like, I'm screwed. This cop's right on my tail, you know what I'm saying? Then I remembered, I said, wait a minute, I prayed this morning, so I don't got to worry. And as soon as I said, wait a minute, I prayed for protection this morning, I don't got to worry, that cop pulled around and just kept going. Yeah, it's crazy. And so, anyways, after I got out of jail when I was 19 for the steroids and I had that experience, the daily bread and stuff, I kind of knew God, but I didn't know Jesus. And for the next 10 years, I battled drug addiction, I battled the streets, I tried to work a few odd jobs, but could never really hold the job down. I got involved in more organized crime and just my lifestyle was this. Just sell a little drugs, make a little money from the street, dice games, gambling, scamming, whatever. And so I could have nice clothes, a few grand in my pocket, and so I can go out to the club or the beach and mac on chicks and just be a lazy bum. I'm gonna have a place to live, have a motorcycle, maybe a car. And so I had a girlfriend who had a car. I didn't need it. I could use her car anytime I wanted. So I was just, and then I broke my ankle, which sparked my pain pill addiction. Then I first broke my knuckle in a fist fight, that was the first thing that sparked my pain pill addiction. Then I got caught with a pistol, got sent to jail for 2 weeks, and I cleaned up and was clean for 3-4 years. And then I broke my ankle, and that they gave me pain pills and it relapsed me for a few years. And then I cleaned up after that again. And the last time was my best friend died of a heroin overdose, which threw me as this young Italian kid, good looking Italian kid with really smart, whole life ahead of him, real good looking kid, exceptionally intelligent. And he died of a heroin overdose.
You speaking and doing your stories as well.
So yeah, after my best friend died, I went off the deep end. I didn't take, I took some pills which led to heroin, and then a couple years later, by the time I had bought this beautiful house and nice cars and jet skis, 4-wheelers, motorcycles, toys. I had it all. But I was slowly liquidating these things so I could get high. You know what I'm saying? And but not the house. And a time came where my girlfriend was like, "Today's bill day. Your half of the bills is $2,000." And I was like, "I got $700." So I just went and robbed the bank, and I got caught. And I had been on a crime spree for about 2 weeks, anyways. I'd been robbing everything. You know what I'm saying? And so it is what it is. And I robbed the bank. They put a tracking device in the money. I got in a high-speed chase, crashed, got out, ran. They caught me. They stomped me out real bad. I had to go to the emergency room and get stitched up, get a full-body CAT scan after they beat me up. I mean, I was busted up. I was black and blue head to toe 20 minutes later. 20 minutes. I was all black and blue because I was covered up while they were just kicking me and stomping me. Yeah. 6 black cops yelling, "Why didn't you shoot, white boy? Why didn't you shoot?" 6 of them. I threw the gun and gave up. And then they came and tackled me, cuffed me, and then stomped me out while I was cuffed in the snow. Yeah, so that was that. I was not too happy about that. I was very calmly telling them, one day I'm going to come back and get you guys for this, but it is what it is. I didn't mean it. I wasn't sincere. I was just angry. And then, so then I ended up going to jail. I put on a $5 million bond. I had a $5 million bond, and I spent 22 months fighting my cases. I spent 19 months in the hole, in solitary confinement, and that's where I had probably the biggest God moment of my life. About 6 months into the hole, I was coming back from court, and I was a high-profile case, and I was already a known troublemaker. That's why I was in the hole. And as I was coming back from court, I had this 5-man phalanx of escort deputies walking around me, and they got me by my arm. I'm cuffed behind my back and legs shackled, right? And all the buddy in the intake, there's 200 guys in the intake, and all these intake cells, they're all watching who's this freaking guy, Jeffrey Dahmer? And he gets his own army of escort. And one of the cops is yanking. I hurt my shoulder wrestling with my homeboy, and I tore my shoulder really bad. It was bad. It'd been about 4 months since I hurt it, but it was still hurting really bad. And the cop's yanking on me. He's pushing me along, and I'm like, "Bro, relax, bro. I know where we're going. You don't have to keep manhandling me, bro." And he goes, "Shut up, inmate. No talking. Shut up, no talking." And I say, "Oh, I know what your problem is, bro. You got a little penis syndrome, huh?" And he didn't like that. And so when I got into this, they put me in the elevator off camera because there's cameras in the hallway. When they went to stick me in the elevator to go down to the hole, as soon as I stepped in, it was off camera, he grabbed me by the back of my head, goes, "Stop resisting," smashed me in there, and then they all beat me. While I'm cuffed up, 6 cops stomped me out, and I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you right now. I'm on the ground, my head smashed against the corrugated floor. There's a 350-pound dude they called the Big Show, 6'6", 350-pound dude called the Big Show. Power drives his knee into the side of my head into this corrugated metal floor while they're all kicking me, and I'm going, "Real tough guys, huh? It's the 6 of you on 1 of me, and I'm cuffed. Why don't you uncuff me and even up the fight? And you're gonna go home tonight and tell your girlfriends, 'Oh, I had to rough one up tonight. Yeah, you got out of line, but I set him straight.'" I said, "Really? Well, you ain't gonna tell him I was in cuffs and there was 6 of you." But anyways, when the dude put the atomic knee on me, I thought I was gonna die. Because, imagine somebody putting a 350-pound weight concentrated in an area about the size of a kneecap onto your head, 350 pounds. I mean, I thought my head was going to burst like a grape. I mean, I thought that's it. This guy's going to kill me, man. My head's going to, there was so much weight on my head. It was crushing me. And I'm going, bro, and I said, bro, you're killing me, bro. You're going to kill me, bro. You're crushing my skull. It was so heavy that he split my head open. And I had to eventually get stitches. But so they take me back to my cell, and this is how dirty and foul they are. They radio ahead, bringing Lindbloom back to his cell in the hole, get his cell ready for him. He just code 9'd or whatever. Code 9 is like attacked an officer or whatever. That's like whatever code it was. He assaulted an officer. So by the time I get to my cell, it's bars just like in the movies, and they open the thing and they shove me in, say back up to the food slot so they can uncuff me, and I do that. Then I turn around and I said, come in and do that again. Now that I don't got cuffs on, let's see. I was some choice words. I was yelling and mother effing and whatever, and they all walked away. But my bunk was covered; it was soaking wet. What they'd done is they took all my pictures, which my girlfriend sent me just to give me hope that not kill myself, and family pictures, high school, spring break, all these pictures of us hanging out, partying. And letters. I had a bunch of letters, some from my grandparents and stuff, and my friends and my girl. They took them all, threw them on my bunk, and dumped a 5-gallon bucket of dirty mop water across my bunk. And so when I sat down on my bunk, I'm bleeding. My head's dripping with blood. I'm out of breath. Just got my butt stomped out. And I look and I see everything's all wet, and I'm like, these scumbags, man, And then God spoke. So I started saying, I can't live like this for the next 30 years, because that's what they were trying to give me, 30 years, And I'm like, I'm not doing this, man. I'm just going to check out. They give you a razor once or twice a week to shave in the shower. You get 1 hour out a day to walk up and down this little catwalk in front of the cells. It's a 5-cell block or unit, and there's like 6 of those in the hole. And they let you out, you walk up and down the thing for an hour, or take a shower, or both. And I figured what I could do is crack that razor open and slit my wrist in the shower and just check out. You know what I'm saying? I've never been afraid to die. I've been shot, been stabbed, had bats broken over my head. I have a big scar right there. I'm all scarred up. And anyways, I was like, just it's my time, whatever. And at that moment, God spoke to my heart. And I don't know how to describe it, but it's like a full-blown conversation with God. That's almost like telepathic, but no clear voice. That's the interesting part. It's just like, he's talking to you. So he said, don't do it. He says, I got plans for you. I said, how am I going to survive 13 years in prison? He says, I'll protect you. Now, that means a lot to me. I'm like, well, if God will protect me, he says, I'll get you through it. I've got you through everything else. He's like, and I gave you a special gift. And I want you to use this time to use that gift, because it's going to create a future for you. And I'm like, what gift? And it was almost as if he put his hand on my head, and he turned my head, and I looked at the bunk. And on the bunk was a letter from my grandmother. Now, I don't know if that's the exact letter, but I remember in one of her letters, I distinctly remember her saying, you write the most beautiful letters. You should be a writer. You could be a writer. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But then after I saw that letter and I thought that, and then God turned my head again, and I looked at my desk, and I had all these novels that I had read. And I remember as I read them thinking, God told me, I gave you this gift as you're a writer. He says, you are a writer. And I remember thinking those novels I read, though they're good by some of the greatest writers in the world, John Grisham, Sidney Sheldon, Tom Clancy, Robert Ludlum, some of my favorite authors. I was like, every time I read one of their books, I'm like, this could be better. I think I could have done better. And it's like, now it's time. Now you're going to do better. So God said, use this time with this gift to start writing. So I spent the next 14 months in solitary confinement, right? And in that 14 months, I wrote 3 novels in my head. And I didn't have the pen and paper, but I had it and I wrote them in my head. And To Be a King, which is the mafia stories, the mafia novel series that I eventually published when I got out, was one of the stories that I wrote in my head when I was in the hole. So this is where things take a turn and get even more like Christian, like wow, right? So before I went to prison, about 8 years before I went to prison, I was associated with this dude named Joe Rubino, this big muscle-bound, steroided out dude, but he was a soft guy. He wasn't a tough guy at all, and he knew it. But he was a drug dealer, steroids and weed, and just like me, he did the same thing that I did, but he just wasn't a tough guy. And so he'd fronted me a bunch of weed, right? A couple $1,000s worth of weed, and I didn't pay him, wouldn't pay him. And eventually he kind of got to where he's like, so you're not going to pay me? And I was like, guy owes me money. When I get the money, I'll pay it. In my mind, he had like hundreds of pounds of weed, so what's a few $1,000 to him is nothing, whatever. A scumbag for me to think that. Anyway, so he basically leaves me alone, and we stopped talking, and eventually he moves. I never see the guy again. Years go by. He moves to Chicago. That's all I know. So then years fast forward, when I get sentenced to prison, I'm in quarantine, and I get a letter from the dude, right? And he says, I still read the Detroit newspapers, even though I live in Chicago. He's like, I don't sell drugs, and I saw you in the newspaper. I felt really bad when I saw an article in the paper about you got all this time in prison, and you did all these crimes, and you got to go away for all this time. I felt bad. He's like, I'm a different person now. I don't sell drugs anymore. I gave my life to Christ. I got a good job as a headhunter in Chicago. He's like, I married a Christian girl from the church choir, just had a son, changed my life. He's like, so I read this article in the paper about you, and I felt really bad. But then next day on my way to work, I couldn't stop thinking about you, and the Holy Spirit came over me. He said, this has only happened to me one other time, which was the moment I gave my life to Christ. The Holy Spirit came over me, and I began to cry. I felt so bad for you, and I felt the Holy Spirit saying, I want you to look out for Gunner. I want you to look out for him. And he's like, I don't know what that means, what that looks like, but I feel God wants me to look out for you. So I wrote him back. This is a guy that I had basically robbed, you know what I'm saying? So I wrote him back, and I said, good to hear from you, man. Thank you. I really appreciate that. If I could ask for one favor, could you send me a few bucks so I can buy pen and paper, because I want to start writing books? So he did. He sent me $30. I spent 20 of it on paper and pen. Spent the next year writing my first novel called The Second Chance. It's about these two high school football players that end up in the NFL. And it's a crazy story. And I write this crazy story. It's like 1,000 pages penned on paper. I send it to Joe, and he's now going to work on the subway. So he's got like an hour-long subway ride every day. And he's like, I'm just blazing through this book. It's so good. And he's like, bro, I just can't believe you wrote this. It's so good. And I'm like, I know it's sloppy and there's a lot of spelling errors. And he's like, I don't even notice that, bro. Like the story, the characters are so good. I just love it. They're just so talented, bro. Like, this is unbelievable. And I'm like, thanks. So everybody in prison was saying the same thing. Who'd read the manuscript, they were like, wow, this is incredible, bro. I can't believe you wrote this. So basically about once every year, I'd write a novel. It'd take me about a year to write. In the third year, I got a typewriter, and I taught myself how to type, pecking away. Like I'm a three-hand, like T-Rex. Even to this day, I type like this, looking at the keyboard. And but anyways, I was knocking out novel after novel after novel, and I became famous in prison as the guy who writes those freaking dope novels. I had a waiting list of people wanting to read my books. Cell 38's got next, then 29, and the guy in A unit, cell 77 wants it, and the guy downstairs wants it, so you're like 6 on the list. It'll be about a month. I mean, people were freaking lining up. They're like, you're the best writer I've ever read. And I've been in prison 20 years. I read thousands of books, man. Like, I can't believe, the best writer I ever read locks down the unit from me, man. It doesn't make sense. Like, what are you doing in prison, bro? You should be freaking in Malibu in a mansion running Hollywood. I said, man, it's a screw up like you and everybody else, man. I didn't know I had this talent till I got here, And so fast forward to the 6th year, I just finished my 6th novel, which was the mafia novel called To Be a King. Just to give you an idea where it stood in my favorites, it was my 6th novel. So I wrote 5 novels before that novel series, because I like the other stories better, you know what I'm saying? But they're all good, and everybody who reads To Be a King, it's the best book I ever read. I'm like, then try reading one of my other ones, and they read one of my other manuscripts, and they're like, oh my goodness, I like this even better. So, but this is in 2009. I finished this book. It was about the same time I Dear John, my ex-girlfriend, the one I had been with 13 years before I went to prison. It had been about 7 years, 6.5, 7 years. I just told her to go on with her life. I had a feeling she had a boyfriend, and so I was down on my luck. I was kind of in a dark place at the time in my bit, halfway through my prison bit, a long way to go, and no girl, no support, no nothing, no money, just a brokey. And Joe, who I called like once a month, the guy who I robbed and sent me the money, and I'd send one book every year. He's like, man, you don't sound like yourself, bro. You like just sound down and out, like the world is great. You're usually upbeat and high spirited and funny, and like, I'm like, bro, what the hell? I got nothing to live for. I'm in prison. I got nothing. I don't want. My girl left. He's like, bro, you got your books to look forward to, bro. Like, you got a gold mine, bro. You got a future, so don't get down. He's like, I tell you what, I'm gonna start you a Facebook page. I'm like, what's Facebook? And he's like, it's this new thing, social media. He's like, send me some pictures and a bio and like a mission statement. So I sent him some pictures of bio, mission statement. He sets up a gun, and him and my buddy Bill manage it. So they respond to anyone who whatever. And so Bill, who's really into the mafia at the time, there was a game called Mafia Wars. Everybody on Facebook was playing it. And so he said, my friend, he posted on my Facebook and his Facebook, and he says, my friend's in prison. He wrote this book about the mafia. People are saying he wrote the next Godfather. Here are some sample chapters to check out. If you like them and you want to contact the author, here's how you do it. You use a prison email system called JPay. And so fast forward a few weeks, and I start getting like fan mail. I'm getting all these random people who are messaging me, writing me, saying, bro, I read those sample chapters. They're so good, man. Like, you're better than Mario Puzo. This is better than The Godfather. I read The Godfather. I read all these. Like, yours is better. And I'm thinking, bro, all you read was 4 chapters. You know what I'm saying? It's a 50-chapter book. You know what I'm saying? You don't even know. You have no idea. And wait till you get to the end. It'll blow your mind. And so that was nice. And then then I get a letter, an email from some random chick who says, hey, this is where things really get interesting, bro. A random chick that says, hey, you probably don't remember me. I was kind of a nerd, but I'm from your neighborhood. I was a nerd because I was raised in a Muslim house, and my father, who was a douchebag, it's me and 5 sisters, and he wouldn't let any of us out of the house. I was the oldest, kind of like Cinderella. I had to cook, clean, babysit. I couldn't go to family function. I wasn't allowed to wear shorts or makeup or, my hair up or nothing like that. I was a typical Muslim girl, just real modest nerd. She's like, but I do remember you. Remember, hearing of you mostly. I saw you a couple of times around. I knew you were a bad boy, you know what I mean? A drug dealer. You like to fight. Your family was the mafia. Blah, 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 blah. But anyways, she's like, I work for a publisher in New York now. And I read those sample chapters of your book, and they're pretty good. She's like, I'd be willing to read the rest of the manuscript, and if it's any good, I could maybe help you get it published. She's like, I work in academic publishing. She's like, but I have departments that are in commercial fiction, and friends who work there. She's like, maybe I can help. So I tell my boy to turn the whole book into a PDF file, which is a pain in the butt, and send it to her. He didn't want to do it. It took me a long time to convince him to do it because he thought she was going to steal it. He thought for sure that she's going to read it, love it. Because that dude's my friend's mother-in-law. He hadn't read the book. He's not a reader. But his mother-in-law read the book, and she's a big reader. And she told him, she's like, flat out, your boy's going to be a millionaire. Your boy's going to be, like, famous from this book. She's like, this is the best book I've ever read. And he's like, this is my mother-in-law, bro. Like, she reads romance novels and stuff. Like, I didn't even think she'd be into it. She was totally into it. Said it was the best book. Anyway, so now he thinks I got a gold mine, so he won't send this girl at the publisher the book. I finally order him to do it. He does it. He sends it to her. The woman reads the book in 3 days on her iPhone and iPad. It's 1,100 pages. So what it is, she read both volumes of the book. So each one's about 500, 550 pages. So almost 1,100 pages total. And she blew through it in 3 days and wrote me a letter and said, she called me a unicorn. That's what she said. She said, in publishing, sometimes you have great writers, but their stories usually aren't that great. They're not that creative. And then every once in a while you have a really great story, but usually the writing's not that very good. You know what I'm saying? But every rare once in a while you have a unicorn who's really well written and tells a great story. She's like, you're the unicorn. She's like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, yeah, I got kicked out of 8th grade and never went back. So it's just a natural gift. And see, here's the thing. She's like, I'm also a Christian now. She's like, I met a guy who introduced me to Christianity, converted me out from Islam. I never was a practicing Muslim, but she's like, and then I became a Christian and got pretty on fire for God. And she's like, so I saw you're a Christian on your Facebook profile too. So maybe we can do Bible studies. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, I love that, you know. And think about where I am. I'm in prison, 6.5 years left. Some random chick, you know, who's single, attractive, no kids, 6-figure executive for a publisher, starts writing me and saying I wrote the best book she's ever read. And I'm just like, hallelujah, God's at work. You know what I'm saying? God is, you know, God's doing it. And all of my boys in prison are like, bro, you hit the jackpot. And I'm like, I know.
Right.
So we start writing each other back and forth, doing Bible studies and writing each other. And it turns out that we had a lot in common, everything in common. We love the outdoors, we love camping, we love hiking and fishing, and we love just nature and animals, and we're big time history and trivia nerds, you know, total trivia nerds. Like we're both like, they wouldn't even let my wife on Jeopardy because they know she'd win everything. That's the type of woman, like they wouldn't even put her on there because it wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
Like they do an aptitude test before they pick somebody, you know, and they're not going to pick some genius who just would blow through everyone. They don't do that. It just doesn't. It won't be fun. Well, that's my wife. My wife would be the one who's like, she would just blow everybody away. And I'm kind of like that too, but not as good as her. She thinks, she likes to say that I'm as smart as her, but I'm not. But I have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, so I was able to hold my own and, you know, parlay with her. But anyways, we went back. I gave it away now. It's my wife. We went back. We fell in love through hundreds of letters. Over like the next year, we wrote thousands of pages of letters. Like probably averaged about 50 to 75 pages a week writing each other. I put my 7th novel on hold. I was 800 pages into my next novel, and I set it aside and wrote her for the whole year, full time, 10-12 hours a day, writing, trivia, Bible study, right? And we slowly but surely, and I kind of had a feeling, and then one day she wrote me and she says, I know this is gonna make you feel uncomfortable, I don't know how else to say it, but you probably already know that I've fallen in love with you. And she's like, well, now what do we do? I said, well, you need to just forget me and go on with your life. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to ruin your life. I got 6.5 years left in prison. You didn't wait for a loser like me. You're a young girl. You got a good job. You're attractive. You know, I'm not going to ruin your life. She says, no, I think you're worth waiting for. She's like, I'd wait 20 years for you. And so I said, well, then I need your full commitment. You can't be out there like dating. She's like, never. She's like, I'm fully committed. I'm like, we can get married. She's like, we can get married tomorrow at the prison in the visiting room. I said, no, let's wait I would rather get married while we're free. So she said, okay. I said, I trust you, and I did, and I still do. So she waits the next 6.5 years. I write another 4 or 5 novels, you know, and then the day that I get released in 2016, that guy Joe, who God told to look out for, my friend Billy, the other one managing my Facebook page, and 2 other my homeboys picked me up at the prison. And, you know, I walked out of there to fanfare, just like, you know, this little crowd of guys, like, yeah, 13 years I did, 13.3 years. They took me to breakfast at Bob Evans. I had steak and eggs. They gave me a bunch of gifts and an iPhone and said, you know, you're home, bro. And then they drove me 5 hours north to where Maria was cooking us a feast. She cooked a big old feast, a full turkey, oxtails, asparagus, mixed green salad, cheesecake, pecan pie, the whole 9. She even gave me a pimp chalice that said king on it, like my book To Be a King. She's like, is there anything you want before you come home? I was like, yeah, I want a pimp chalice and a chef hat. That's what I told her. A pimp chalice and a chef hat. So
It's just the simple things, man.
That's it. It's all in. A fishing pole would be nice, but my dad gave me a bunch of fishing poles the day I got out. But anyway, so then the next day I had to go report to parole. Believe it or not, at 4 o'clock in the morning, Joe, who's the big bodybuilder, wanted to work out with me. I was in really good shape. I came home in the best shape of my life at age 43. And he wanted to go to the gym. So we drove 45 minutes to the nearest gym and had a workout at like 5 in the morning. You know, it was fun. And then I had to go check in with my parole officer. And then I had to go. Then I went home, took a shower, changed, went to the courthouse, and got married. And it was funny because my boys were just bawling during the vows. You know what I mean? They were just crying, and like I was a little bit too, but they were just like they were choked up. And then Joe baptized. Like when we were leaving the courthouse at this little town where my wife moved us 9 miles outside of this little town called Rogers City, a little tiny town, very quaint, very waspy. 1950s, and I was worried about like where am I going to work out? I have to buy my own gym. And as they were walking out of the courthouse, there's this little gym across the road, and it's a fitness center. So my boys walked me over there and paid for my membership for a whole year. They're like, here you go, man. You're in the game, bro. Here's your gym.
You're back.
So then we went to this lake. Went to this little remote, secluded private park lake on Lake Huron. It was I'll never forget the day, it was about 95 degrees. It was beautiful, sunny. The water was so warm. Lake Huron usually never gets very warm, but this was the hottest summer on record. I know because it was so hot in prison. It was just miserable. But anyways, Joe, that same guy who I had robbed, who got touchy, baptized me and Maria in Lake Huron. 20 minutes after we were married, he says, you know, why do you want to be baptized in Christ? I said, when I come out of that water, I'm a new man. The old Al's gone, and the new me. And maybe if I remember, I'll send you that clip because Billy was videoing it, and it's in the documentary that's being made on my life right now. There's a documentary being made, that little clip will be in there where I get baptized, and then. I didn't want to get out of that water, man. That water was so nice. And I mean, you think the day before I was in a concrete prison cell where it's 100 degrees, sweating and dying with murderers everywhere. And the next day I'm floating around Lake Huron in bath water. You know, I'm a free man. You know what I'm saying? It was very, very, very surreal. And the moment I got out, I'll tell you a quick story about the day I got out when we were almost to my new home. My boys are like, well, this is the road you live on, right? And it's just this road that goes through the wilderness for miles, right? And I wanted to surprise Maria, so I said, just drive past the house, and when you could go a couple hundred yards past the house, and I'm going to creep through the woods and sneak up on Maria and surprise. So that was one of the most surreal moments of my life. She knew we were coming. She didn't know what time. She knew I'd be there within an hour or so. So we drive by. She hears a car go by. It's just in the wilderness. There's a little green house. And she says, well, that's not them. They just kept going. So they let me out. I creep through the woods, and I'll never forget it. I'm in the middle of the woods. It's a very still day, no wind. The birds are chirping. I could hear the insects. The sun was shining. A couple of wispy clouds. And I stopped in the woods, and this is like... I could breathe for the first time in 13 years. I could breathe. I was like, freedom. I can't believe I'm really free. And I just looked around, and with tears in my eyes, and I was just like, I cannot believe I'm right here. This is unbelievable. I survived. God promised He'd protect me, and He did. And here I am, and I'm about to start a new life, a good life. And at that moment, I looked through the woods, and I could see on the back deck my wife, our future wife, sitting there. And she had some music playing softly, and she was sitting there. I was like, what is she doing? Well, it turned out she was praying. And she was just sitting there praying, and because she had a little music playing inside, she couldn't hear me come sneaking up. So I snuck right up to the railing, and I said, what's up, Birdie? And she flinches, and I call her Birdie, and she's like, oh my God. She dogs me, starts crying, and I told my boys, give me 10 minutes, bro, because they wanted to video it. And I'm like, no, this is
Yeah.
private moment.
Yeah.
Obviously some tears will probably be shed. I don't need to be videoing that, bro. So just give me 10 minutes and you guys come. And they come around the corner 7 minutes later with the camera on us. We're still hugged up and crying. And it was cool. And then so the next day, after they baptized me, they took me out to a beautiful dinner, and then they had to go home and back to their families, and I started my life. And I kind of had a honeymoon period for about 9 months where I was editing my books to be a king, because I was going to publish them first. And so I just did a lot of fishing and camping and enjoying life with my wife. And then I published my books, and I won't say they went viral, but they did really well, really fast. Everybody started calling them the next Godfather and calling me the next Mario Puzo, and everybody's just in all the books. And I started a clothing line called Art Thing Apparel, and then I just and you just got busy with life, trying to promote my books, trying to figure out how to make money, trying to figure out how to be acclimated back into society. And it was a struggle financially with my wife getting laid off on and off out of but anyways, every time we were struggling or down on our luck, we turned to God, and God provided.
That is the definition, Gunner, of from dark to light, right there.
Yeah.
That is the definition. And when you came out of prison, not only did you find physical freedom, but you found fear and for your soul, man. And I think that's probably one of the most powerful I think I've ever heard. From the journey into the darkness and the depths to just being brought up to the Most High, and man, you really said something a little earlier in this podcast, Gunner, that stuck out to me quite a lot. And that was when you were in jail, and you said you were looking through this little window, right? This little gap, and you said you saw a dove. And you mentioned that the dove wasn't focused on the world, that the dove was focused on you.
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes how I feel about God. Is oftentimes we feel like we're so small, we're just one person out of billions out there. Why would God care so much about me and my life and my stories and my experiences? And I think that was just a reminder of God does care about you.
Yeah.
He cares about every aspect of your life, and he cares about where you're going. He cares about the direction that you're taking. He cares about the harm that you're doing to yourself physically, mentally, and spiritually, and he does care, and he will do everything he can do possibly to bring you back to him. And even if that means going
prison,
roundabout way, prison, whatever it takes to transform you to the person that you need to become in order to experience his presence. And the powerful thing is this world that we live in is so temporary. It's so temporary, man. There's an eternity that awaits us after this. And so whatever God has to do in this temporary world to shape us and mold us and correct us, please, so be it, because there's an eternity that follows this. And an eternity is a lot longer than 80 years or 90 years of life. Yeah,
I got cancer right now, and they say it's terminal. And this is an eye opener, It's like, what's important, what isn't important, You used to care about what haters say, and trolls and people and associates and family. And I can care less about any of that stuff. Like why would I care? I'm dying. Only thing that matters now is my relationship with God and making memories with loved ones and friends while I'm still here, enjoying my life while I still can. You know what I'm saying? That's it. And so, it's kind of a blessing, because unlike most people, I've been given a heads up. Like, hey, listen, your time is near. You're running out of time. So look at me. I'm camping. I spent the whole summer, 3-4 months camping in the wilderness, trout fishing every day, and just enjoying myself. Just like, I might not be here next year to do this. So, I'm just going to live it up and enjoy while I can. I'm still physically able, so I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? And only thing that matters now is my relationship with God and my peace there. I'm at peace with it, and I'm not a complex like religious man. Like it's simple. God is real. Jesus is real. It's 100%, no doubt about that. And so once you accept that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, you're saved. Now it's about like projecting it to everybody else, like the people who need to understand and learn. But I'm saved. You know what I mean? I'm not perfect. You know, and you always think, man, am I saved? I hope I am. You know, but I like to think God's been with me my whole life. He's always been riding with me. He's always been protecting me. He's always been providing for me. So it's like, I know he has. There's a reason for that. You know, if I was going to be disregarded at the end of the road, I don't think he would have wasted his time and energy on me, like he does so many people who have been. You know, he's brushed the dust off his feet of. There's a lot of people who he tried to get, and they simply rejected him. So he says, enough is enough. That's not me. He tried to get me early on. He got me. That's it. I'm all in. But I wasn't all in. I wasn't all in until the last few years, you know. And even now I feel like, am I all in? I could be doing more, but you know, I don't know. Hopefully my testimony and this documentary and stuff will reach a large audience and plant some seeds. I mean, if you can listen to my story, me tell my story and not believe God's real, then, you know, I don't know what else to tell you. You know, God's been present and visible throughout my entire life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. And it's, we're all students of life. You know, even now, there's lessons we'll learn. There's lessons we'll learn next year. There's lessons we'll learn 5 years.
Yeah, we'll learn till the day we die.
Yeah, till the day we die. And, you know, but I think another great just mindset that you have that everyone should just really try and learn from is just being present with where you're at. I know, you know, the cancer, you're dealing with that, and that kind of shifted some things, and prison shifted some things. But I think there's so many people, even who aren't experiencing prison or cancer or things like that, that they're not present. And, you know, so why don't wait for something to force you to turn around, you know, and to create that presence. Like, enjoy your life and spend it with God. Focus on God regardless of your circumstances. You know, don't wait for those things to force you to turn around. So
yes, sadly, most people it'll be too late when they finally decide. You know what I'm saying? Most people, they let life slip by and they don't focus on what's important. And then one day they have a heart attack and they die, and then they're in the seat of judgment going, you know, I gave you resources, I gave you time, I gave you health, I gave you everything that you got, and you didn't do nothing with it, you know? And that's the sad part. Even Christians. There's a lot of Christians who claim to be Christian, but they don't do anything Christian. You know, if you're a Christian and you're cursing all the time, then, you know, you have no commitment. Because that's one of the easiest things you can control is your mouth. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, controlling your mouth is not an easy thing to do. However, you do have total control over it. So if you can't articulate a thought without cursing, well, one is you're lowbrow. Two is you're not a Christian. I mean, you're not Christ-like. Nobody Christ-like people walk around dropping F-bombs and cursing all the time. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, if you're not tithing, if you're not donating some time to your community, if you're not talking about Jesus with people who don't know him, and don't think just because you're going to church and Bible study that, you know, you're doing the Christian thing. If you're saved, then your mission should be the unsaved. If you just gather with the same people every week for Bible study and talk about Christ, that doesn't do nothing to build your treasures in heaven. You know what I'm saying? You gotta be on the proactive prowl. You gotta be looking for people who don't know Jesus. That's why, like, my secular novels, I tell some people in the church that I write secular novels, and they're just like very judgmental and sad. They're like, oh yeah, you know, like, but you could write Christian stuff. And I'm like, if I write Christian stuff, the majority of people who read it will be Christians. I'm not after Christians. I'm after people who will read a book like mine, go, oh my God, this is an incredible book, man, and I need to know more about this author. Then they read the bio on the back that says this author's got an 8th grade education. He had a divine experience in prison, wrote these 10 novels. Now he's a devout Christian, da da da. And they're like, whoa, and that plants a seed. Then they maybe go on YouTube and watch some interviews, watch this interview or this podcast, and they start to go, this. After hearing my story, like, man, this whole God thing, this thing might be real, man. I need to look into this. But I haven't been called to write Christian literature or, Christian content, because that's for people who've already been saved. Some people who are on the fence may read it, but it's just not my divine calling. If I had that calling to do that, that's what I would have been inspired to do decades ago. You know what I'm saying? But it's just not. God has used my talent and tool to reach as outreach to lost souls who don't know God, they don't know Christ, but they need something powerful to plant a seed. Reading my book is the ultimate power, because they're like, dude, there's no way this guy could have ever wrote this book without some kind of divine intervention. There's no way. Then they read another one, and it's just as good or better, and they're like, there's no way this guy is clearly has been touched by God. So God is real. I mean, let me look a little deeper into this Jesus thing, and look what he did for this dude. 13 years in prison, and he's got terminal cancer, and he's not crying and whining, and he's out camping and fishing and at total peace, because whatever happens is God's will. You know what I'm saying? It's not wrong. It's his perfect will. So if I'm meant to die in 6 months or a year, then that was his will. I'm going to heaven. I get to see my loved ones and my cats and everyone who went before me. Or maybe he gives me a miracle, and that's God's will. So I can say, hey, listen, on top of everything else I've survived and been through and endured, he also gave me cancer, an incurable terminal cancer, and then cured me of it, just to prove to you that he's real. You know?
He doesn't work in world logic.
No.
He's got his own system.
And if I live another 5 or 10 years, that's a miracle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
every day we get to live is a miracle. Every 24 hours we get to
every
live.
day, every experience, every day. When I'm done with this, I'm gonna go jump on my motorcycle, my enduro motorcycle over there. I got 2 of them. One's for a homie if he comes up. Anyways, and I'm gonna drive back about 10 more miles, and there's this lake that connects to this stream. It's several hundred meters in. I want to get to it, and I want to try and fish it. And if there are fish in it, I got a kayak. I got a blow-up kayak over there, and I'll drag that kayak back in the woods 600-700 yards, throw it in this little lake, and see what I can catch in there, see what I can pull out. That's living. You know what I'm saying? And people. Meanwhile, there are people, haters of mine, or whoever, just scrolling TikTok and Instagram. There will be people who see this and call me a liar, bro. They'll say I'm lying about this or that in my life. I had no association with the mafia, or I didn't know any mobsters. Or it's like, because there's no. My family tree is very easy to research and see, but there's no direct link between me and mafia. Because it's never been recorded. There's no court cases, no whatever. And so you get weirdos who will be like, this guy's full of crap. You didn't know his last name's Lindbloom. He's not even Italian. I didn't know, not thinking. And my mother was Grace Tocco. The boss of the mafia for 40 years was Jack Tocco, the cousin of my grandpa, who grew up in the same, little neighborhood together, whose parents grew up together, cousins in the old country. Anyways, it's just stupid. And people who will say that, I'm like, they're going to be like hating from a TikTok account or something. I'm out fishing, bro. I'm out riding my dirt bike. I'm out having fun. Like, you people are the ones that are dying, bro. Like, I'm living. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People gotta put the social network down and the phone down and the computer down, and spend some time with God. And then not only that, but get closer to God so you can tell people about God.
Yeah. I mean, that's just such a good mindset to have, Gunner. Let's finish off with one more question, man, and then we'll wrap it up and kind of tell more people where to find you, stuff like that, where they can download your books. Gunner, if you could go back and tell your younger version of yourself one thing, what would that be?
Put Jesus first in your life and everything will fall into place perfectly. That's it. Put Jesus first in your life. Like I would say, join the Air Force, go in the Air Force, become a fighter pilot, and then retire after 10 years when your eyes start to go. Join the CIA, become a counterintelligence operative, blah, blah, blah. But all of that would happen if I put Jesus first. You see what I'm saying? So if you just put Jesus first, that's why in the Ten Commandments, the most powerful commandment is love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Because if you love God with your heart, mind, and soul, you're going to follow the other 9 commandments. You know what I'm saying? So if you truly love God, you'll love your neighbor. If you truly love God, you'll respect your parents. If you truly love God, you won't steal, you won't murder, you won't do that. So if it's the same thing. Like if I could tell my younger self, just put Jesus and ground your life in Jesus. You don't have to become a Bible scholar. Just but spend some time with Jesus every day. Acknowledge He's your King. And ground your life in Him, and everything else that you could possibly want and do will fall perfectly into place. So if your dream is to be an Air Force fighter pilot, that'll happen. If your dream after that is to become a CIA operative, that will happen. Everything you want will happen if you just put Jesus first. Now, your plans may change based on God's will. You know what I'm saying? Like you might think you want to be a fighter pilot, but maybe you join the Air Force and you're not good at piloting, you're scared of heights or whatever, but then they move you to a department where you're like, you develop engineering skills or computer skills, and then before you know it, by the time you retire, you got a degree in computer engineering and you get a job at Lockheed Martin or something when you get out. You see what I'm saying? It's like God's in control, even though what you think you want may not be what He knows is best for you. So, but if you put Jesus first, Lockheed Martin may have a $250,000 job waiting for you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just always be putting Jesus first, tithing. Put the church first, and then telling souls about Jesus. One of the biggest mistakes, the biggest sins that the modern Christian church does is they're scared to talk about Jesus at work, with colleagues, with friends, with family, people who might be on the fence. They don't want to offend people. They don't want to annoy anybody. I'm like, you're more scared of what man thinks than what God thinks. You know what I'm saying? Like you're more fearful of offending man than you are of offending God, who created you and the entire universe. Really? Be bold in your faith. Go tell some people about Jesus and let God work the rest out.
Right, dude. Amen, brother. Well, where can people find you, man? Where can people find your books? Where can they find more of you? What are you currently up to? And what's next for Gunner Lindblum?
So I have a new novel coming out called Blind Sight 2030. It happens in the year 2030. It's the Chinese and Russia attacks America, and it creates chaos. It's a kind of a dystopian political thriller with a Christian undertone, a little bit of Christian. It's not like super strong because, again, I'm after like the lost, and if it gets too preachy and too Christian-y, people won't want to read it. You know what I'm saying? So I just the main character is Christian, and he prays throughout the book a few times and maybe quotes scripture here and there, and all the good characters are Christian. They pray and whatever. And so that's my next novel. Then I have another novel that's coming out after that, which is called Snowman Chronicles, which is about 2 huge cocaine smugglers. Again, there's a Christian undertone. The guy who's telling you the story is in prison for 3,000 kilos of heroin. He gives his life to Christ, and he writes his story, and then you're reading the book. It's just his story. And he's just about to get out of prison after serving 15 years. Anyways, it's a fiction novel. Then to find me, best place to find me is at, social media. I have multiple social media. I have author Gunner Alan Lindblum on Facebook. I have To Be a King. My book has its own Facebook page with like 5,000 followers. I have a YouTube channel called Gunner Detroit, Gunner Detroit. And I got 16,000 subscribers. I've been posting a lot of like outdoor content, camping content stuff. I used to post a lot of like war stories and stuff like that, but I don't do it anymore because there's no ROI. There's nothing godly or good comes from me telling you about how I jacked or robbed or ganked or sold drugs or beat somebody up or whatever. And just, I don't do that no more. But there's good outdoor content and just good, some of my old stuff I left up, that can be good, inspirational. And then, let me see, Instagram is at The Real Gunner Detroit. Have no problem finding me there. And my best place to find everything is my website, Gunner Detroit, Gunner Detroit.com. And you can find links to my books, links to my YouTube, links to my publishing company. For any of your publishing needs or ghostwriting needs, editing needs, you can reach out to me. On Facebook Messenger or Instagram DM or my website, the contact form on my website, which is whitepinepublishing.com. So there's that. And make sure to check out my books, To Be a King, Volume 1 and 2, about the Mafia family. And if you maybe not into that, maybe sign up for my newsletter for my new book. When it gets released, you'll get notified. The Blindside 2030, the dystopian political. It's a good story. The main character is in prison for something he didn't do. He's just finishing up serving 10 years for something he didn't even do when the crap hits the fan and we get attacked. And the government locks down the inmates during martial law, locks them down to die. Because they can't set them free, and the guards leave because there'd been an EMP attack, and everything's is fried, and there's been a cyber attack, so there's no electricity. So all the guards just want to go home to their families, so they got to walk 20 miles or however far their home. So they leave the prison unattended, so they lock all the inmates down to die. Well, my main character has a officer who likes him, and a good cop, and they have a history. The cop's dad, my main character's dad, saved the officer's dad from getting jumped years ago, because he only knows this because he recognized the name Vanzetti. My main character's name is Dylan Vanzetti, and when he was little, the officer was a little kid. He's with his dad, and his men surrounded him and started jumping him and beating him, and some guy pulled up in a van in an army uniform and helped my dad, and beat these guys up. And the guy said, all I remember is the guy's name says G. Vanzetti. And he's like, was your dad in the army? He's like, yeah, his name is George Vanzetti, and that's where he lived down there. So the officer says, I don't want to see you die in here. So he gives him a master key to break out of the prison. So he helps them break when all the officers abdicate the prison and surrender to the National Guard. My main character is able to break out, but then everything goes awry, and it's just crazy. It's a great story. So my main character's got to travel 300 miles through anarchy during the collapse of society to somehow try and find his wife and daughter, who are his wife started a little farm homestead way up in the wilderness because they feared something like this was coming because of the political environment. And so my main character now has to find his wife and daughter somehow through this chaos, and he ends up saving all these characters, and it's a good story. So you might like
that. That sounds fascinating, dude. I cannot wait for you to release that. That would be a great read. Yeah. I will make sure all the links and everything that you mentioned will be in the description.
Thank you.
People can check you out as well. Gunner, thank you so much again, brother, for hopping on this call and for
my pleasure.
Your beautiful testimony and your beautiful story. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I'm glad we were able to get it done.
Absolutely. Take care, Gunner. It's good talking to you, man.
Yeah, man. God bless you. Have a good one, buddy.